the end and sort of kind of go everything at a high level, just the most important stuff. But if there's anything that you want me to dive deep in or stop and cover, just, interrupt me or drop a message in the chat. Or if you want to wait till after, we can do that too, whichever's easier. All right, so, okay, you guys can all see my dashboard for today. This is it's the daily dashboard. There's I guess I'll start at the very basic element of Rise, which we call a tracking event. It's the data architecture that basically everything is built on top of. So if you click this little clock icon here, you can actually see these tracking events as they come in. And they're really simple. It's just a timestamp, it's an app ID, it's a URL if the URL is present, and then a category, right? So that's like really, really simple. And then the category is really one of the most important parts, because the categories and categorization of how you spend your time on different apps and websites, that's what all of these other metrics are built on. So getting the categorization right is really important if you want all these metrics like work hours, focus, meetings, breaks to be accurate. So I'm actually going to dive into that first. So you can see your categories for a particular day on the far right bottom corner of your daily dashboard. So you can see that today, my top category is code, then it's email, stand-up, productivity, Twitter. Categories are fully customizable. And if I'm to click into a specific category, I can see all the apps and websites that compose that category for the current day, in this case, right? So code is a little confusing. Code is also the name of my code editor. So code here is actually an app. It's called Visual Studio Code. Warp is another app. And then api.rize.io is a website. You can see that these all categorize to code. If I wanted to recategorize them, just click on the category. I'll have a drop down of all the different categories that exist. I can also just create a new one by clicking create a new category, or just typing in the new category name, hitting create new category. The other option here is change for this instant only. And then the option below that is change and create a rule moving forward. So change for this instant only will basically change whatever app or website I'm on, the category I'm changing, just for the time range that I'm looking at. In this case, it's a day. Change and create a rule moving forward will change it for that time range, but then also change all future events to make sure that they align to that. And so, yeah, that's really high level, and you can change an app at a high level, or a website, a domain at a high level, and you'll see these little icons. This is a Mac OS app, and this is a website. I'm not going to get too into it now, but one of the coolest things about Rise is that you can get really, really granular in how you categorize things. So if you see this little arrow here, it'll create a drop down of all the if it's an app, it's going to show all the titles that you've seen in this time range. And I can actually click on code here, and I can create a rule based on the title, a categorization rule based on the title with these same options. So if I select change for this instant only, it's going to overwrite any time spent in this app with this title as my new category. And I can do it as a one-time or as a rule moving forward. The same applies to websites. So if I go to api.rize.io, I can click that, and you'll see like there's a link here called Sidekick. If I click that, I can actually change it based on the title or based on the URL. So that's another cool thing. If I want to see exactly what that URL is, I can actually click this link here, and it will open it in the browser. So yeah, categories, generally, we do have default categories for apps and websites, but we want to expand the defaults a lot, also create different default settings depending on your role, because categorization is so important. But what we recommend is that the first week or two that you use Rise, basically spend about 5 minutes a day at the end of your day looking at your categories and seeing if everything feels right. If anything feels off, click into that category, see what app or website is making that number feel off, and recategorize it. The other thing is the apps and websites that we don't have categories for will start in miscellaneous, once you spend a certain threshold of time in them, they're going to get bumped up to uncategorized. And so we recommend only categorizing them once they get uncategorized, because basically there's no way that we'll be able to categorize every, at least right now, every website, every app on the internet. So miscellaneous is sort of just like a catch-all for things that you're not spending enough time in to worry about. Once they get to uncategorized, that's when we do recommend spending the time to categorize it. So yeah, categorization is really important, because once we get to these different metrics like work hours and focus time, they're all going to be built off your categories. Okay, so now that we've covered categorization, I'm going to move actually to the very top here to show the timeline. So the timeline is also a really core component. It's nice because it's a quick visualization of actually how you spent your time during the day. So there's a few components. You'll see first at the top, there's these purple blocks. The purple blocks represent when you were active on the computer. You can hover over them to see the time range you were active, and the top apps and websites, as well as categories within that time range. Below that, you'll see these sort of teal and pink bars. These represent sessions. So there can be 3 types of sessions. You'll only see meeting and focus sessions on your timeline, but you can hover over those to see the breakdown there as well. And I'll talk about sessions a little more in a bit. The third bar you may or may not see, depending on if you've integrated with your calendar, but this is what we call pinned calendar. And so if you integrate with your calendar, you can add certain keywords to calendar events to either shade them like focus or meeting sessions, or they'll just be gray otherwise, or even break. That's the blue here. And it's a great way to compare how you plan to spend your time versus how you actually spend your time. And you can also sort of see upcoming events there too, which is kind of nice. Okay, so that's like the timeline at a high level. I'm going to get into the sessions next. So sessions there's 3 types of sessions in Rise. There's focus, there's meetings, and there's breaks. Breaks are probably the simplest. Breaks basically are any time that you're taking a break. So you can do that manually through the break timer, the session timer, which we'll cover. And then you can also, Rise will automatically detect breaks if your computer goes idle for more than 5 minutes. Rise will automatically stop tracking, and then when you come back and are active again, Rise will start tracking again, and it will look if that gap period where you were away from the computer is more than 5 minutes and less than an hour. Rise will automatically create a break for that too. Close this window really quickly. There's a loud bird out there. The other type of sessions are meeting and focus. And again, there's 2 ways that I'll start with focus. 2 ways that they can be created. One is manually through the session timer, which we'll cover, and the second is automatically based on your activity. There's actually a third that's sort of new, where you can actually automatically create sessions based on your calendar, and I can talk about that, your calendar events, based on that if you're interested. But for the automatic session detection, because this is something that's really cool and unique about Rise also, Rise will basically Rise is going to divide all the categories that you have here into focus and non-focus categories. And basically, once you hit a certain threshold of time in focus categories, your Rise will detect that you're in a focus session. So if you spend roughly about 75% of a 15-minute block in focus categories, Rise is going to detect that you're focused, automatically create a session, and track that time as a focus session. So it's really cool because it also creates this sort of readable timeline of your day. So I started the morning, I did email, I did a little Portuguese class learning, I did email, more Portuguese, and then I've been coding for the rest of the morning in addition to the daily sync. The sessions are important because that's how we'll sum up your sessions to calculate your focus time, the length of all your focus sessions. Meetings are really similar, except they're just based on if you spend a certain threshold of time in meeting activity, or if you have a calendar, integrated calendar with 2+ confirmed attendees, it will also automatically create a meeting for that meeting event. The last part, so that's gonna, these sessions are cool and you can actually click into them to see some really cool stats. So when you first click into a focus session, you'll see this view. It's gonna show the breakdown for your apps and websites just for that focus session. What's nice about this is you can categorize things just for that time period. So during these focus sessions, you might say, you know, right now, email or time that was in like messages, this is not messaging, this is actually product work or user interviews or something like that. And you can change it just for this instance, or, you know, if you were to change it moving forward, it would create it for the instance and then for all future events. So that's pretty cool. The next section of the focus session, you'll be able to rate your focus, how focused you are. If you do this, we use machine learning to actually grade your focus, and it gets better and better the more you rate it. And then your last bit is just stats on the focus session. This is really cool. So you'll see your focus score at the top. That's based on our machine learning algorithm. And then if you can see the major, most important inputs that go into that score. So how much time did I spend in focus time with benchmarks? What were the top categories that I spent in? How many interruptions did I have, and what was interrupting me? Like Twitter is a big interrupter for me, messages to photos. So there's a lot of really rich data here that you can really get granular. With meetings, it's just your meeting breakdown, but still can be valuable to see. So the other aspect, since we're talking about focus sessions, in this breakdown, you can see sort of in-depth stats instead of on a particular type of session, all of the types of the session for that day. So if we click on focus in your breakdown, you can see things like total focus time for the day, your average quality of your focus sessions for the day, the length of your focus sessions with benchmarks, your interrupters for the day, your focus quality over the day. So one thing I've learned through this is today is a little different, but normally I actually focus a lot better in the mornings. And so that's been really insightful for me. And I try and actually now optimize most of my focus sessions for the mornings and my meetings for the afternoon. So there's a lot of, you can get similar stats for meetings and breaks by clicking on them. The top metric, the last one I'll cover on the page, is your work hours. This is also really important. I mean, this is one of the inspirations for why my co-founder and I actually built Rize. Like, we didn't know how many hours we worked a day, and which was crazy because we know so much about our lives, but it's, you know, without a product like Rize, it can be really hard to say, am I overworking? Am I underworking? Like, am I on track to burn out? And so work hours is a really simple but really important metric. It functions, it's also really simply calculated. All of your categories are going to be split into focus and work and non-work categories. And then your work hours is going to be the sum of all your work categories in addition to your breaks. So since I'm talking about that, if you press Command K, you can press G, go to, and then you can go to settings, or you can just press the period if you're in the dashboard. In your settings general, you'll see these three settings. These are the only settings I'm going to cover right now, but they're the most important. Here are the excluded from work hour categories. Here are the excluded from focus time categories. These are the ones that you want to check to make sure if focus feels off, if work hours feels off, make sure that these are all correct. So basically every category that is here that's excluded from work hours won't be counted to your work hours. Any category that's here won't be counted towards your focus time, which means it will prevent the creation of those focus sessions if you spend a lot of time in them. Some people need to tweak these a little bit. Like sometimes email is focus for some people, it's not for others. So I would just recommend like taking a glance at that. Okay, yeah, and so like that's really at a high level. I know it's like a fire hose of information, but at a high level, the daily dashboard, you can click week, or you can click month, right, to see a lot of these stats, but just at a higher level. I'm not going to cover the projects section because we're going to be revamping that really soon. But if you have questions about that, let me know. Okay, now I'm going to jump very quickly to the session timer. I'll just cover this really fast. It's pretty simple. So the session timer is going to show you your upcoming sessions. This is going to be based off your user interview, or sorry, off your, I'm reading from my events, based off your calendar. Your recent sessions are going to show exactly the sessions that have already happened and passed. And then you'll have this break, this time since last break, which is going to show you the time since you last took a break. And then a few options to start meetings, focus breaks, or pause tracking. So I can, if I click on this button, a modal will appear. I can actually hover over the arrow on the far right if I want a quick start. But I'll cover just starting a focus session. Click on focus session, you'll see I can set a goal for the session. I can tag it with a project. I can set a duration, and I can set a specific music. These are all live radio types of music that are radios that live streams that are tied to focused music in particular with no ads. So it's going to be lo-fi, jazz music, bossa nova. That's sort of one of my favorites. Even just like coffee shop ambient noise. We'll be adding a Spotify integration here soon, but music is a really powerful tool for getting focus work done. For breaks, you can actually do something similar. We have actually guided breaks. So we only have one right now. It's a calm meditation, but that's also been kind of a nice addition. And we'll be adding a lot more there. And yeah, so that's really at a high level. If you click in, you're going to see the similar stats that you saw on the dashboard page. So, okay, that was like rapid fire through the major features and how Rize works. The last thing I'll cover really quickly is these buttons down here. So if you click the command palette, this will come up. You can also press Command K or Control K if you're on Windows, Command K on Mac OS. Support is here. You can view video tutorials, the user guide. You can join our Discord community, which we're really active in. And you can also see our change log, which we post to every time we post a new feature. You can chat support as well or email us. We also have support in the bottom right if you have questions or issues or anything like that. And then this last link here is the settings. This is just admins for employees only, but the settings here to make any changes. Yeah, okay, so that's the high level. I will pause the recording now, and then we can, yeah, if you guys